this afternoon, Melanie. Okay. Hi, I'm Karen Morgan. I'm the lead fraud volunteer with AARP Maryland, and this is one of the series of social media interviews that we are bringing to you for Protect Week, which will be from April 20th to 24th in 2026. And what we want to do is shine a spotlight on elder financial abuse and just fraud prevention and things that people can do to stay safe. All of our resources that we make available during Protect Week are free. And we want to talk to experts in different areas to get information about different aspects of fraud prevention. So, with me today is Melanie Devoe with the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. She works in the commission, supports the agency's mission to warn Americans about scams. She served in various roles for the CFTC, which is what people in the know call it, the CFTC. And she has worked with the Office of Customer Education and Outreach, the Whistleblower Office, and the Division of Enforcement. So wide-ranging experience there, Melanie. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, good. Yeah. And let me just ask you as we get started, a lot of people are not familiar with the Commodity Futures Trading Commission or what sort of role they may have in fraud prevention. It seems like it's actually pretty wide ranging.
Yes, well, thanks for asking. And before I begin, I need to give a disclaimer that the views I'm about to share are my own and not those of anyone at my agency, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission.
Okay.
So, the CFTC, as people call it, is a federal agency, and we have wide ranging jurisdiction over commodities markets, including futures, options, and swaps. And we have something called anti fraud jurisdiction over those underlying commodities. So you probably don't talk about commodities all the time, but there are a lot of different types of commodities. There are agricultural commodities like corn and energy commodities. And there are also other commodities like crypto commodities and precious metals commodities that are things that scammers sometimes use because it's an easy way to transfer value. And that's why we're here today, is
Mm-hmm.
because the CFTC is committed to warning Americans about scams involving commodities.
Well, I can't help but say this, Melanie. This reminds me of orange juice futures from the famous film Trading Places, that 1983 film with Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd, where the Duke brothers had some sort of scheme to corner the market on orange juice commodities, frozen orange juice, I think it was, and they had the weird little scheme, and and so talking to you, it's like I can't help thinking about that film, which is it's one of my favorite films. But they were into scam prevention even in with or future frozen orange juice futures.
Yes, definitely.
So, well, let's talk about, since we're futures, that brings to mind there's investments, investment schemes, investment um, mechanisms. So, what kind of fraud prevention scams does the CFTC encounter? Just can you just give me an idea about that? What sorts of investment schemes he encounters?
Sure. One of the biggest ones we're dealing with right now is what we call a relationship investment scam. And this is a scam that's essentially just a long con. And what happens is the scammer meets the victim online somehow. So the scammer might meet the victim on a dating app, a social media app, a networking app, or even through a simple wrong number text. The next thing that happens is that the scammer engages with the victim and makes the victim think that they have a new best friend or a new love interest. And then the scammer shows the victim that they're really wealthy. And the victim asks the scammer, "Why are you so wealthy?" And the scammer says, "Oh, it's because I invest in something." And whatever that investment is, they
Mm-hmm.
convince the victim to invest in it as well. And what happens is the victim ends up sending real money to fake websites. And the scammer then shows the victim a website where they're having spectacular profits. It's a really great investment. And so the victim is convinced to invest more and more until the victim has invested all of their wealth, including taking out retirement savings, mortgaging their homes, taking out personal loans, all to give to this fake investment platform. So that is one of the biggest scams we're facing. And the bad news is professional criminals are behind the scam. They're overseas and they're using psychological tricks on their victims and also artificial intelligence to ensnare their victims. So it's a big problem, and we want Americans to know it's out there, because if you can recognize the scam, you can avoid the scam.
Right. So, artificial intelligence, or AI, as people often call it, how might AI be employed in a relationship investment scam as far as the CFTC is concerned?
Well, the criminals will use AI to communicate with the victims. So that person you think you're texting may be an actual AI bot. Or the criminals can use AI to
Mhm.
translate from foreign languages into English, or to do what is called deep fakes, where they can have a person look like they're another person using some technology. So they could make me look like a blonde man with the right technology and sound like one too. It's
Mhm.
really
Mhm.
interesting what they can do with artificial intelligence, and they're very motivated to convince the victim that the victim is in a real relationship, but the person on the other side is a fake person. So they use all kinds of AI tools to fool the victim, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's not hard to be fooled, really. I recall a huge deep fake scam that targeted a company in Singapore where an employee thought he was talking with a manager, and the manager wanted him to transfer $25 million. Not an unusual transaction in that type of company. And so he did only, and he thought he was talking to a meeting room full of his bosses. It was all faked. It was all fake, and the money was transferred to the criminals. So and when you have millions
It's
of dollars at stake, I think these criminals are incentivized to use AI.
exactly. I've heard AI can make a good criminal a professional criminal,
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately. Um, so as far as the
unfortunately.
CFTC is concerned, unfortunately, how much do you think has been reported lost to these investment scams the CFTC encounters, or reported stolen, really is the correct terminology?
Right. So last year, the FBI received reports of over 5.8 billion in losses to these relationship investment scams. However, those are only reported losses. Many of the victims are ashamed that they've lost this money. And because of that shame, they don't want to report the loss. So, true estimates of the amount lost are much higher. The Federal Trade Commission has done some estimates, and they found that very few people do report this kind of scam. So, what we want to message to your listeners is that reporting is very important. And victims of these scams should not be ashamed. We see all types of people scammed, even the most sophisticated and educated among us. So please report it if you've been scammed. You can report to the FBI at ic3.gov, and you can report to the CFTC at cftc.gov/submit a tip. So it's very important to report these scams.
Yeah, one message that we put out as often as possible is that fraud is never about how intelligent you are. It never was. It's about how emotional you are. That's why anyone can be targeted by these criminals. Every human has emotions. Every human can be distracted, distressed, panicked, upset, or feeling like they've just met the love of their life. All of these are heightened emotional situations, and if you act under those circumstances, you could end up doing things that you really don't want to do because you don't realize that someone is stealing from you. So let me move on to, I think I know we have a bit of a delay here, so I'm not sure if you're hearing everything that I'm saying, but I hope you are. Um, so what are some red flags that you've encountered, um, that you can tell our listeners indicate that they might be involved, or someone that they know might be involved in a relationship investment scam?
Thanks for asking that question. There are a bunch of red flags, and I'll go through them, but I also want to let you know that these red flags are on our website, cftc.gov/learn and protect. We have a bunch of tips and tricks to spot these scammers, so I would encourage your listeners to go there. Now, there's a series of red flags. The first red flag is that wherever you met the scammer, they want to move you off that platform and into an encrypted platform, such as WhatsApp or Signal. And the reason they're doing that is a lot of our American websites have anti-scam detection capabilities, but
Mm-hmm.
those are not available on the encrypted websites. So that's red flag number one. Red flag, excuse me, red flag number two is that they're constantly love bombing you. So the other person is constantly texting you, showing you pictures of, their food, their dog, their affluent lifestyles, whatever it may be. So that's another red flag. They'll be the first text you receive in the morning and the last text you get at night.
And they're
Another
telling you
red
how
flag is they
beautiful and
can't
wonderful you
ever
are.
meet. They cannot meet. Exactly. They're telling you exactly what you want to hear. So if you're in that
Mhm.
situation, be suspicious. The another red flag is that, they can't meet you because they work overseas, or they're deployed in the military, or they work on an oil rig. And anything like that that prevents them from actually coming and meeting you and having a cup of coffee with you, that's a huge red flag. So we ask people to be on the lookout for these red flags, as well as the last one, and this is probably the most important red flag, is they've asked you to invest in something and you're seeing your profits soar. You are making
Mm-hmm.
extraordinary gains. So unfortunately, most investments don't work that way. As we're probably all familiar, our investments go up, they go down, they go up, they go down. They don't go straight up typically. At least mine don't, unfortunately.
Right.
But because they're showing you a fake website, they're showing you a situation where you're just making money,
Hand over fist.
exorbitant amounts of money. And yeah, hand over fist. And that's why you're encouraged to deplete your life savings to give to this scammer, because you think you're actually a millionaire at this point. And why wouldn't you want to, make more than 1 million? So those are the red flags I would warn you about.
Yes, it's trivially easy to fake a spreadsheet. You just throw up some Excel spreadsheet on the screen and you put in fake numbers and you just show the numbers going up and up and up. And and I think with these criminals, even if you ask a question saying, well, gee, I've never had investments go up like this before. Why do you, what are you doing that's so different? They always have an answer for that.
Hmm. Yes.
So even
And it
if
usually
you,
involves an uncle or an aunt
yes,
who who has some kind of inside information, or they're just really good at trading and they've taught you to be
yes,
really good at trading. Those are the
or
explanations that
or
they will
it's a
give you.
it's a secret, but I do have like a connection to some, you might call it insider trading, but I don't really think it is, but these tips have always worked or something like that.
Exactly.
And don't tell anyone. How about that as a red flag? Don't tell anyone because I'll get in trouble. If
That's a huge red flag. Don't tell your family, don't tell your friends. That's a huge red flag.
exactly. Um, so what if you know that, or what if you suspect that a loved one or a close friend is involved in an investment scam or relationship investment scam, like what we've been talking about? Do you have any tips on how to convince that person that they're a target in a criminal act and that they're not making millions of dollars? They might actually be the victim of theft of, significant amounts of money.
Yes, I have a series of tips that might be helpful, but you have to understand that the situation is very difficult because the scammer has convinced them, has worked with them for months, perhaps even over a year, to convince them that what they're saying is true. And what the scammer is telling them is much better news than what you're trying to tell them. So the scammer is telling them that they've found the love of their life for a new best friend and that they're extremely wealthy because they've given all their money to this investment that unfortunately turned out to be fake. So you're really bursting their bubble. So it's a
Mhm.
difficult conversation. I can tell you what the experts say you could try. Now, one thing you could try is to compare what the scammer said and what actually happened. So, for instance, if the scammer said they were going to visit the victim during the holidays, but the scammer did not, another thing you can do is employ a series of technical tricks, if you will, to try to figure out if your loved one is dealing with a scammer. Now, the first of these is not perfect, but it has worked and helped some victims determine that they're dealing with a scammer. And that is to reverse image search your new love interest or best friend. We found victims have determined that they are in a scam because they'll do that and realize that the person they think they're in love with is actually married and living in another country. So that's one thing you can try.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing you can try is you can look up the street level address of the trading company and do an image, street level image search. And if you find that the address is showing you a small house when you thought you were dealing with a big trading company, that's another red flag. And the
Yes.
third thing they can try is to look up the age of the website. And there's many different
Hmm.
ways you can figure out how to do that. One is through something called ican.org. But if you just Google, look up the age of the website, you will find various different ways to do this. And then you can test what the scammer told you versus how old that website is. So, for instance, if the scammer said the website's been around for 10 years, but you realize it's brand new and it's only been around for 3 weeks, that is a
Mm-hmm.
big red flag. So,
That's
those are some
huge.
tricks that you can try to kind of to kind of break the spell. The other thing you can do is once you've understood the lies the scammer has told your loved one, you can look for news articles. There's been a lot of reporting in the news about these scams and try to find a similar victim to your loved one and show the victim the scam story, because sometimes that will break through. Um, and finally, I have some bad news if you're dealing with a loved one in a scam. Unfortunately, the scammers will sell the victims' names to other scammers. So the
Uh,
person who was originally scammed in this relationship investment scam may then be approached by someone for what we call a recovery scam. And what this means is
mm-hmm.
someone will approach them and say, "Hey, I can get all your money back for you. Just pay me X amount of dollars."
Mm-hmm.
Well, unfortunately, once the money is gone, it is very hard to get back. And typically, only law enforcement or police or government agencies are able to do it. So, again, if your loved one's involved in a scam, please have them report it to either the FBI at ic3.gov, or they can report it to the CFTC at cftc.gov. Now, there's one last scam that your loved one may encounter, and that's what we call the money mule scam. And
Mm-hmm.
this is when the victim has already gone through the first two scams and they're completely out of money. The scammers may approach them and ask them to let the scammer use the person's bank account or cryptocurrency wallet address in order for the criminal to pass money through the financial system to clean it using the victim's name. Now, unfortunately, this can be a criminal act, so we want to warn all victims not to do this. And
Mm-hmm.
again, there's a lot more information at cftc.gov/learn and protect.
Thank you so much for those tips, Melanie. Those are so helpful. And it I think you made an excellent point about why it's so hard to convince a loved one that they're involved in that they're a target or a victim of a criminal act, because you're giving them bad news and the criminal's only been giving them good news. And
Mhm.
I can easily see some, the victim saying, well, you're just jealous. You don't want me to be happy. You've never wanted me to be happy. And, you're jealous of my new love interest, and that I have more money than you'll ever have. And then it just spirals from there downward, unfortunately. Um, so that is huge. So as we wrap up, the last question I want to ask you is that what if you are doing investments, maybe in crypto or maybe in futures or something like that, and you wonder what you can do to make sure you're not targeted or victimized. What kind of steps can you take to protect yourself from these crimes if you want to invest in commodity futures?
That's a great question. And I would say that you need to do research on who you're investing with and figure out how long they've been in the business. Do those simple things like check out the age of the website, Google them, ask for references, talk to a financial advisor about the investment. And, there are many safe ways to invest in commodities. The ones you should be alarmed about are the scams that come to you, the investment opportunities that come to you out of the blue when you're not looking for them. Those are the
Mm-hmm.
ones that you should be alarmed at. If you want to invest in commodities and you go out and you do your research and you deal with a company that has been in business for a long time, and that, or maybe it's a local company that is well trusted and has great reviews, that's a different story. These scammers are going to contact you out of the blue and suggest that you invest in commodities. So it's a much different situation.
Yeah, that's also an excellent point. It's like something just dropped into great fortune dropped into your lap from the sky. No, it didn't. That's not how fortune happens. So you really need to, like you said, do your research and if you want to invest, you initiate the contacts, you initiate the research and the investments, and get strong good advice from your financial planner. um, so that you can protect yourself and that you are dealing with a legitimate concern.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, Melanie, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk with us today, and to help us make Protect Week better for everybody in the state of Maryland. And once again, AARP Maryland is one of the coordinators of Protect Week, one of the participating organizations. There are about 20 government and nonprofit organizations that take part in this initiative every year. This year, it is April 20th to 24th. And this interview that we've just had with Melanie Devoe is one of the social media interviews that we will make freely available so that you can stay safe, not only during Protect Week, but every week of the year. Melanie, thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.